Welcome back to our part 2 of Alien 3 Deep Dive. If you haven't seen part 1, we suggest you do that first. Otherwise, let's continue. Our first scene for the video is after the funeral, where the inmates are enjoying their meal in the dining hall. It is here we see Dillon's inner circle. The first one to note sitting with him is David Postlethwaite, serving a 20-year sentence for rape. David is seen near Dillon in many shots, whether dining or both rumor control scenes. He even helps Ripley and seems practical and generous with communication. He also has no problem standing up to Dillon in disagreement. He seems cynical rather than filled with faith, and this lined up with Brett in the first film. With such a parallel, it is no surprise that David would say, which was a homage to the first Alien film. He manages to bait the alien successfully, but then the alien uses the air ducts to ambush and kill him. Also at the table is Peter Gregor, molestation and rape. Ripley sat next to Gregor at Dillon's table. He is actually good friends with Junior. He would team up with him in an attempt to rape Ripley, and Gregor would hold her face, trying to shush her. After getting free, Ripley would punch him in the face. During the quinine sequence, Gregor was on fire badly, and Ripley helps Junior to put his fire out. Because Clemens is dead, Kevin would be the one to bandage Gregor, and for the rest of the film, Gregor is easily identifiable because of it. Gregor is shaking when trying to light Morse's cigarette in the assembly hall later. Afterwards, Gregor shows that he is not vested in the group's religion, as he asks Clive if he believes in all this heaven stuff, and then he laughs about their situation. He was killed by the alien after running into Morse later. A really amazing character for me in the film is Ted Jr. Guileless. Aggravated sexual assault, assault with a deadly weapon, rape, and murder. This character is great, and Holt McCallany does not get enough credit for his performance. When Ripley stands her ground with Dillon, Jr. seems shocked and confused, as if she has no right to do so. He even stares at Dillon, most likely expecting him to expel her. When she sits down, you can see Jr. gritting his teeth as his jawline shows this. His offense is evident when Dillon says that there is enough faith even for her, and Junior's expression is perplexed. Also notice that he refrains from speaking, and rather than staring at Ripley, you can see he focuses on Dillon's actions towards her all the time, as if observing and questioning his leader's actions. Junior would also be close to Dillon during the rumor control meetings, and would be beside Dillon as the scavenging team prepares. Junior led the rape gang, and an interesting line in earlier drafts of the scripts has Dillon saying this to Junior when he comes to Ripley's aid. "You have been closer to me and my teaching than anyone here. How could you do this thing?" It is Junior that gets beaten the most out of the rape gang. Later, during the quinine sequence, he helps his burning friend Gregor with great concern, and Ripley helps him. They recognize each other, and Junior seems full of melancholy. No doubt he realizes how far he has fallen, and you see him tearfully responding to the moment as he leaves his friend to carry out Dillon's orders. Within minutes, he redeems himself by sacrificing his life for the others, leading the alien into the toxic disposal room. It's amazing how much they did with this character with the limited script they had. There are more details we will cover about this one as the video goes on. During the fan sequence, Murphy is singing In the Year 2525 by Exordium and Terminus. In the workprint, he is singing Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. However, this was most likely not used because of copyright issues. While he is cleaning, he comes upon the alien thinking it's his dog. The growing alien kills him, but it does so not with its inner jaws, even though many believe that's the case. Rather, it spits at him, and this is unanimously confirmed by all sources, whether it's books, scripts, cards, and yes, the workprint. You can see the alien spit in the unused footage, and if you slow down the frame, you can see liquid hitting Murphy's face and nothing else. This was a nice addition to the Alien universe. However, it should be noted that it derived from the Vincent Ward John Fasano script. This is where I should mention that I chose not to cover a lot of the workprint because the version I found is a very poor VHS transfer. I will show major things in this print that are at least visible, but for the most part, it's very hard to see. So you should see it for yourself, and I put a link in the description to help you find the version that I used. If anyone watching this knows a better version of this work print, please put it in the chat for those who really would like to see this. As you can see, the version I found is not very good. Back to the vent shaft, we meet another prisoner, and this one is quite comical in a dark way. Alan Jude, first-degree murder, no weapon. Jude is unfortunately the janitor of the prison, as he is sent to clean up the vent shaft with Murphy's body and the mopping scene in the dining hall. The messes this guy has to clean up and the looks he gives in some of the scenes is just humorous. The novel concretes this, as later in the book it is mentioned that Jude will no longer carry his mop when being chased by the dragon through corridors. Before the chase, he is banging his head against a concrete wall, prepping himself for what's coming. He is eventually killed by the alien as he tries to run into the piston chamber. Now, the scavenging expedition really didn't make sense for most moviegoers. The prisoners have been here for 5 years, and it's perplexing that they didn't map out this facility by now. The novel explains that when the facility was operational, many workers would hide items for the black market or for personal use. It also stated that there were areas that would have food, cigarettes, and other useful items like break areas. Now that the facility is closed and unmapped, the scavenging team's job is to find such things, if possible, and map out the area until they have exhausted all locations. Now, to a casual audience member at this point, Gallic has been nothing but ridiculed.
What the hell did you ever do right? Pete, you got that down pretty good.
We can tell by earlier scenes that he is not all there, but it is established at this point that he is treated poorly. And the only one that addresses him with any respect in the movie so far is Dillon.
Gallic, you light a candle for Murphy, will you?
That's thousands.
Gallic takes this abuse, and one could have sympathized with him up to this point. Yet since you know his rap sheet, it's surprising that he hasn't murdered one of his other inmates by now. Clearly this character is insane, what with future events well known, but something kept him in check up to this point. But after seeing the dragon, he's lost it. During the meeting with Clemens and Andrews, you can spy a little bird trinket to give a nod to the first and second film. Superintendent Andrews is obviously the abbot from Vincent Ward's version of Alien 3, but the novel for the film fleshed out the character more. The character in the novel matches the performance given in the film by Brian Glover. Andrews is stuck on this crappy assignment and wants to retire or be promoted away from the facility. He expects everything to be run smoothly, and any bad incident might make him look like he can't handle his current position. As a result, he is very disturbed by the idea of a woman in the environment, because if anything happens to her, it's on him, and if there's any trouble with the prisoners towards her, it's also on him. It makes it look like he has no control over his own facility if something is to happen. As you watch the film, the further things start to go sour, you can see Glover expressing more and more agitation with each event. It's not subtle either. Even without the novel's context, if you pay enough attention, you can notice all of this with Glover's performance. In the first act of Alien 3, I'm afraid to say that Ripley is a bit infuriating. She has no reason not to disclose the information about the alien once Clemens tells her about finding the acid mark in the fan tunnel because that is correlative proof. It is also blatantly obvious that Clemens is completely sincere to helping her. The reason this is in the film is to create false intrigue because of a poorly written script. We as the audience know the alien is there. We saw it come down, we saw it born, and we have already seen it kill. There is no intrigue to build at this point, and it is a fallacy for Ripley to do what she is doing logically by not telling them. Dance did an amazing job despite being the one constantly asking Ripley what's going on, and later, Dance taps into this aggravation for our sakes. When Gallic is brought into the room, Dance shows his agitation when Ripley comes out and tells everyone about the beast and then says she will talk to Andrews. It was like a slap in the face, and Clemens had the right to be pissed, even though he held no grudge. He was a really good character, and it's regrettable he died so early in the film. And on the other side of that coin, in defense of Ripley, Alan Dean Foster tried to address this in his novel, because he stated that Ripley lacked trust in Clemens, or anybody, and asked him directly, why should she trust him? Knowing some of her mindset in the film, though, would have helped at least a little. I have also heard some commentaries where people were annoyed that Ripley was gallivanting in the prison wherever she pleased, when she was told to stay in the med bay. I never really had a problem with this. Ripley never really listened to others, and since we had known this character, she had been dealing with the xenomorph, and man isn't much to fear compared to the creature. Thus, Ripley's desire to go find Bishop immediately, rather than wait for Clemens to go with her, backfires when Junior and his friends attempt to assault her. That is where we meet our next prisoner. Clive, William, gang crimes. When Dillon starts beating up everyone, you can see William dropping to his knees and begging for mercy, hoping to avoid that beating. Clive would also stand up to Dillon after the beast was freed and said he would not stay with the others. External sources state that Clive and Gregor are atheists and don't hold with the religion of the others. Whether this is fact when filming or not, I don't know. However, just before the bait and chase sequence, Clive and his buddy Gregor question if they believe that a god exists, and both seem skeptical rather than for sure. Take this as you will. Clive was one of the 3 prisoners who would have held up in the abattoir in earlier scripts and be killed by Gallic. As for Clive's death, he is actually killed off screen. The choice for the music during this scene is really odd, and the idea of having Junior putting on his goggles and screaming into the air is an artistic decision that I question. However, it is what it is. The scene's intent and the music playing clash harshly. This is the only track in this brilliant soundtrack that does not work for me at all. When filming the main shot of the alien at Ripley's face, Geiler and Hill told Fincher he could not shoot the scene because of money. Defiantly, Fincher took Sigourney and a camera and shot the scene himself, as he felt the scene was instrumental to the film. And he was right. Now is the time I will cover the never-realized cocoon scene because it relates to this moment. I think it was critical that this concept was not included in the film, despite the desire of fans to see it realized. If the cocoon scene came to be, there would be absolutely no reason the alien would not take Ripley with it to secure for the Queen's birth. I would think it would be the alien's #1 priority to assure the Queen's future survival. On a side note, we must consider that the alien is not like the others we have seen before. Thus, you notice it likes to eat its victims like an animal. In fact, Fincher wanted this. He said he wanted the alien to kill for sustenance, and he does focus on it often in either cut. The alien acts more animalistic and is a born predator. Perhaps by instinct it knows that Ripley has a queen, so it does not kill her, but it might be simply dumber than other aliens as it kills everyone, rather than save them for future propagation of the species. This alien was unique at the time the movie came out. Nowadays it's par for the course, as the aliens are basically stupid, animalistic creatures that kill, especially in the AVP films and Alien Covenant. When the second rumor control meeting begins, you see Junior praying with his buddy Gregor, huddled next to him. It is also relevant that they are not sitting by Dillon, as they are on the outs with their leader. Another interesting thing is that when Andrews moves along the conversation, Dillon turns annoyed, and you can see his right-hand man, David, looking perplexed by the interruption. After the death of Andrews, you can see that David is not praying with the group. Instead, he mumbles to Kevin, "That thing was massive," to which Kevin says, "I saw it." Obviously, he is losing some of the faith. During the discussion on what to do, you can see some of the cameo prisoners again, and we come to our last major prisoner profile. Arthur Walking Stick. Drug manufacture, murder, and rape. In the dining hall earlier, Arthur was behind Dillon's table, and when they come up with a plan to trap the alien, Arthur helps Troy search for batteries before the quinine scene. In the theatrical edition, Arthur was the first to be burned to death when he looked up from his mop saying, In the assembly cut, Arthur survived and would go on to guard the trapped alien. He would then be killed by Gallic. Now that we have covered all the prisoner introductions, I'll take a moment to note that there is an Easter egg which all the previous writers of the film were given prisoner names. David, for David Twohy, Eric Buggy, for Eric Red, Clive William, for William Gibson, Lawrence, for Larry Ferguson, Walter Gallic, for Walter Hill, and Mark Vincent for Vincent Ward. John Fasano and Rex Pickett were omitted from this group. As to why, I have a hypothesis, but without facts to back it up, I would rather let you decide. Morse is such a smart mouth, and he just doesn't care right up to the end of the film. What makes this character even more effective is that it reminds us of Ripley's relationship with Parker in Alien, and she pushes back just like she did in that film. One of the film's goofs occurs in the assembly hall, where Dillon asks Ripley,
"Hey sister, what about you? You're an officer. How about showing us a little leadership?"
Then, when a plan is devised, and she discloses it, Dillon says this,
"Why should we put our ass on the line for you?"
I'm sure there's many reasons to explain this, especially with the chaos involving the shoot. However, for a casual viewer, this is a contradiction, and thus I mentioned it. As the prisoners fill the pipes with quinine, we get a lot of moments from characters. Eric, the serial killer, shows his cowardice and panic when he crawls through the pipes, saying,
I hate this place.
Kevin has a scene where he notes the material smells awful, and his companion says, "Don't breathe it," to which Kevin responds, "I'm in an effing pipe with it. How can I keep from breathing it?" Now, a low point for Aaron is when the fire is raging. Gregor is behind him and catches fire, and then he falls. Aaron looks back seeing this, but rather than help him, he keeps running, which is kind of low. This is when Ripley and Junior helps him before his friend dies in the attempt to save them all. Now, the death of Arthur is really disturbing, especially when Gallic panics, screaming he's sorry. It was good the creature killed Gallic in the final version. The idea that he would survive somehow after releasing it is kind of stupid. When Ripley goes to the EEV, notice how clean and surprisingly intact it now looks. Did Jude clean this up or what? Because it looks like it's never crashed. It looks pristine. I consider this a gaffe in the film as well. Dillon's idea of arming themselves and standing their ground together with weapons is at least practical for those who never encountered this alien, and his statement about at least hurting it is something. However, the prisoners are now falling apart, and Dillon knows he's losing control. It was at this line,
Well, I ain't staying here.
Well then suit yourself.
that the three prisoners would leave the group and try to survive in the abattoir on their own until Gallic would eventually kill them. This scenario was dumped, and the prisoners remained together and went to the furnace instead, which is more believable. Now, one of the scenes I always wanted in this film was the scene where Ripley attacks the alien. She grabs a pipe and then finds the alien in this shot. What frustrated me about this shot is that It is clearly the alien. However, with fancy cutting, they turned it into a pipe which has zero resemblance. In the scene, Ripley began bashing the huddled alien with a pipe, trying to get it to attack her, and it grabbed the pipe and threw it and cornered her. The alien would then run away. Pictures of this footage were commonly on trading cards, including the Starpix 92 line. This scene was shot late in production, as it replaced the cocoon room. The scene is described in the novel as well. When Ripley tries to get Dillon to kill her, it is a great scene with perfect performances. That's the thing about this movie. The acting is intense and well done on every level, even the bit players. There is no part that was miscast. Everyone brought their A game, and Fincher knew how to use them. Terry Rawlings also deserves credit for the editing, and of course, Elliot Goldenthal's score ties everything in a bow. I will say Goldenthal's harrowing score is a must-own for any Alien fan. It is also so unique in comparison to most Alien scores, and I would rate it in the top 20 scores ever made. The blunt speech Ripley gives the prisoners pretty much sums up the mood of the entire film.
What makes you think they're gonna care about a bunch of lifers who found God at the ass end of space? They think we're crud.
Thus, your only choice is to fight to the death. Now, in a great scene continuing the characterization of serial killer Eric Buggy, he shows his true cowardice and panic when Gregor comes running into the piston chamber. You can see Eric going batshit and cowering. The conniving Eric, who murdered helpless teens, is now huddling in his corner. You can see Eric rocking back and forth in the background in fear. This terror in Eric will continue to the point that Ripley needs to stop him from ruining everything. One scene that was omitted from the final film was when Jude was running behind Morse and slipped on a pool of blood. When he realizes what just happened, he starts yelling. There is also a scene where Dillon finds the body of Troy. Once the piston starts, Eric books it and doesn't care about anyone else. His fear and lack of foresight causes him to walk right into the alien, and Ripley finds his body within a minute. The workprint confirms it is Eric's body because Ripley clearly says his name when she finds the body.
Eric.
The novel also confirms this and states she found the bodies of Eric and Clive very close together. Thus, the hanging body is Clive William. A funny story about this scene is when the alien was backed into the corner and was flailing in agitation while not coming out, Fincher's direction to Tom Woodruff, who was in the suit, was, "You hate that bitch, and you hate that torch." Woodruff did a pretty good job conveying that. In another workprint scene, there is extended dialogue with Aaron and the security team. He tells them Ripley has an alien in her, and Bishop states he knows. Then Aaron comments on the size of their cage.
Have you seen the beast?
Yes, sir. Horrible. Unbelievable. She's got one inside her.
We know that. You're gonna need a bigger cage than that.
In the workprint, when Aaron attacks Bishop, he yells, "Effin' android."
There was no need for any of it.
So there are two last questions some have of the film, and one is Bishop to a droid, and the answer is no from all sources I discovered. First, his head wound is showing blood. The fact that he is still standing after such a hit does give scrutiny, though. But one of the things that must be leaned on are the previous scripts, as all of them had Bishop 2 dying while he professed he was not a droid, and that was that. The other question was, did the team care at all to save Ripley, and could she have made it? I scoured wherever I could, and pretty much all sources say no. Even current products like the Upper Deck Alien 3 trading cards from 2020 states that Michael Bishop is ruthless and only cares about getting an alien specimen. Michael Bishop would appear again in the game Colonial Marines Stasis Interrupted, where he would interview a surviving Hicks. For more about this, I would say check out the game, but it's a mess and not something I would recommend you pay money for unless you're a true Alien fanatic. If you need more information as to whether Michael Bishop cares about Ripley, just listen to what he says in the movie. Because at first he says he wants to kill it, then he changes his tune.
Think of all we can learn from it. It's the chance of a lifetime. You must let me have it. It's a magnificent specimen.
Obviously, he only cares about what she carries, and that is her value. As the platform moved from the containment team, there was unreleased footage of Ripley having birthing pains, and Morse helped her. The only thing I could find of this was a picture. As for Ripley making it, if you go by the theatrical cut and the previous photo, the answer is no. She couldn't have made it because the alien was about to birth. I actually prefer the assembly cut because it leaves it ambiguous. It raises the value of her death because she would not risk survival if the creature fell into company hands. Our final workprint scene is Morse looking over the edge where Ripley fell. He is then taken out of the facility, but his story is not over because he would leave this facility and write a book called Space Beast about what happened. What's funny about this book is that in real life there's an insert of this text, which was included in the technical guide for Alien, called Alien, the Weyland-Yutani Report. The book focuses on the Alien films and Prometheus, but does not include the AVP films. In the Alien Resurrection novel, Morse's book is referred to by Call specifically. There are tons of things I didn't go over about this film, good and bad. For instance, continuity errors with Ripley's orange juice in the dining hall, or the blood on Clement's tunic during the autopsy scenes, plus the cryobeds are completely different props as what we saw in the Aliens film. There are also tons of workprint scenes to discover, and let's not forget the religious subtext of the film that has Ripley falling from the heavens with disciples who war with the devil, and in the end all must carry their own crosses and repent as she sacrifices her life for others in a Christ-like pose. There is even Joan of Arc references in the film as well. As I think I have shown, this movie is packed with stuff, and you just have to dig for it, and I can't cover it all. It's worth the time if you're a fan of the franchise. Now, to be fair, on whatever side of the fence you choose to view this film, there is a lot to hate and love about it. In the negative department for this film, the script is amateur at best, especially the start, which makes zero sense. The facehuggers, the eggs, all of it just doesn't add up. In the script, there were only a few interesting characters like Clemens, Ripley, Dillon. Even 85, with all his rewrites, was uninspiring. The inhabitants of Fury 161 were just bodies waiting to be killed, and had it not been for Fincher or Pickett's efforts to give life to some of the prisoners, we would have nothing but a B-slasher horror flick. The Alien 3 script was a stark contrast to Alien and Aliens, which had deep characters on every level. Also, the discarding of Newt and Hicks was a mistake. When I first saw the 1991 preview for the film, I couldn't wait to see what happened with Hicks and Newt. And then I read the novel and was floored. It really bothered me because it totally changed the tone of the series after Cameron's film. We invested in those characters and they were just discarded. Now, there are a lot of people who say that it's very important that Newt and Hicks died to get the tone back to the original Alien. There's no reason why this tone could not have been maintained by keeping both of them alive. I think the scriptwriters were just lazy, or they didn't care, which is actually true from all found accounts. Another negative is that the color corrections around FX objects in the film are really bad. In truth, effects honestly don't mean much to me in any film. I honestly like cheesy effects as I grew up on Lost in Space, Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, and Star Trek on television. I like for my effects to be great, but if they're not, I can accept it, like in films such as Ice Pirates and Battle Beyond the Stars. Those two films can suit me just fine. I can stomach any bad special effect, unless it's ridiculous for the time, like The Mummy Returns, or is just blatantly incompetent in comparison to an outrageous budget like the Book of Boba Fett. Still, it would be disingenuous if I didn't note the effects are not as good as the first two films. On the pros, no one should dismiss what all these actors did with such little material. There are so many personalities conveyed in this film with subtlety and setup. That was David Fincher forcing in his own ideas despite Giler and Hill, and Rex Pickett conveyed this in interviews. The acting is top-notch, and it brought life to a shallow script, which many films cannot achieve with a good script. Secondly, the atmosphere of this film is unique for its time. Alien stands by itself, monumental and close to perfection. Aliens looked amazing by adding to the Alien aesthetic and creating images of its own. Alien Resurrection and Alien Covenant mirrored these two films as it combined both. Prometheus visually also stands on its own, but also has aesthetics from the first two films. Alien 3 was completely its own vision, and it is haunting, desolate, and a strange environment which is unique to this franchise, and it only enhances this film. This bleeds into the next positive, which is tone. The 80s were filled with fun popcorn films where humor was over the top and action heroes were bulletproof. As the 90s dawned, we started getting darker films like War of the Roses, Misery, Total Recall, Silence of the Lambs, and Reservoir Dogs, to name a few. Alien 3 came out at a time when dark cinema was birthing, and this film pushed it as far as it could go, which was something of a shell shock for moviegoers at the time. The feelings of dread, fear, and loathing were pushed on the audience relentlessly. By the mid-90s and certainly the late 90s, this type of cinema was on full steam ahead. The hopelessness recreates the feeling of the first Alien, even though it does not achieve the status of the first one. For me, Aliens, Alien Resurrection, Covenant, and the AVP films make the aliens easy to kill, but this film does not, like the first one, and I appreciate that part of it. For my next positive, I must confess, for transparency's sake, that Alien 3 has an emotional resonance for me. When this film came out in theaters in 1992, I was in a terrible place in my life. I had no desire to live, and I wallowed in a crushing depression that would inevitably cause me to live in the streets, homeless in Toledo, Ohio, years later. At that time, I saw the world as cruel, dark, and hopeless, with little good people or mercy. When Alien 3 came out, it mirrored my view of the world perfectly. But in this movie were echoed lines that were forced into my consciousness, especially Dillon's speech at the end of the movie, where he talks about not dying on your knees.
The only question is how you check out. Do you want it on your feet? Or on your knees? Begging.
Even today, I hear that line, plus the extra word omitted, when I remember those times, because it put a fire in my soul to fight when I thought all was lost. This is the true power of celluloid for some of us, and Alien 3 had power for me. As time went on, I matured, had children, had a career, responsibilities, and I don't look at the film the same way I did 30 plus years ago. Looking at the film today, I believe both objectively and subjectively that Alien 3 deserves and has every right to fit with the first two films, and my reasons were given in both of my videos for this film's deep dive. I am not saying this movie is perfect, nor would I suggest that this film is in a top 50 list or anything like that, but it does have nuances that make it greater than what most people say it is. Finally, I want to challenge the nihilism debate. Many see this film as completely nihilistic, and you can find articles on the internet parroting this. Killing off Hicks and Newt was definitely a nihilistic act, yet we know from interviews that Fincher really wanted Pickett to explore the religion of the prisoners and spoke about redemption often. The script was literally shredded, but Fincher somehow pushed redemption into this movie, so it cannot be described as completely nihilistic. These prisoners could have huddled in the abattoir together, hoping and waiting for the containment team to save them, but instead they did what they could to stop this beast and put their lives in jeopardy. Some, even Rennie Harlan, maligned the idea of prisoners being the focus of the film because they are all bad. The challenge I will put to those subscribing to this narrative is to look at the subtext of this narrative. Are rapists and murderers, especially characters like Eric, worthy or capable of redemption? This is the question the film presents. How evil must one be to never deserve redemption? And who is the judge of that? Well, in regards to a fictional movie, it's all of us individually. The film is not just one thing or the other. There is more to it than that, and that is just another positive inhabiting the complexities of this film, in my opinion. Now I'm going to make some people really mad, and it's not like I haven't seen it in the comments before. My favorite Alien film is the first one, of course. My second favorite is Alien 3, with aliens closely behind it. The things I have mentioned pretty much explain why I see it this way. To add to that, action-orientated alien films, beyond Aliens, just don't do it for me that much. Fincher turned a bland script into a film bulging with possibilities, and it is those things that make it great, along with the magnificent cast that inhabited it. In my eyes, the chaos of making this was worth it. One thing I will say is that it was a worthy end to this trilogy. But it wasn't the end, was it? 5 years later, we would get Alien Resurrection, and we will cover that film as well, I promise. But first, we will finish Return of the Jedi and Basic Instinct. With that said, we have reached the end of another video, and we can't wait to see you again. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Help the channel.